Yo, let's go. What's up, y'all? Happy Sunday. There goes the notification. Happy Sunday. Hope everybody's having a good Papa's Day out there. I thought we'd do a little something different today. We're going to do a pure movie analysis. Now, we haven't done that here. We've talked about films, of course, but we haven't done a pure just movie analysis. Yeah, I've done a couple over on Instagram. Go and check out my Instagram, same name, Bays Lit Analyzer. Yeah, go and check out my Instagram over there. And I've done a couple of movie analyses, but I thought we'd do something a little different today because first of all, this stream is of course dedicated to my homeboy Jethro, because Jeth is the one who he told me about this movie. I mean, I consider myself pretty dialed into movies. And I didn't even know about this movie. Didn't know that it had come out yesterday or 2 days ago rather. And Jeff told me about it. So, so this morning I was, I tuned in and I checked it out, and immediately I thought, oh man, we got to do this movie. So yeah, of course, always, we're usually doing, or we've always done in the past, literary analysis. We've done pure, looking at the text, explication. And my only justification for this one is I can think of a number of books that this film relates to, that it takes from. And of course, it's based on a short story, but I'd never even heard of the short story. It's called Spiderhead. Okay. And yeah, when Jack told me about it, he was like, "Do you see, you can watch the new Spiderhead?" And I was thinking, Spider-Man? What? I'm not going to watch that. But I knew it wouldn't be that because it came from Jeff, and he's based as always. So I checked it out this morning. Man, you guys, yeah, we definitely got to talk about this movie. So I'm just going to go through. We're kind of freestyling it today. All right, y'all. I don't have any notes. I'm going off the top of my dome here. You ever heard that song? You guys ever heard that song? Freestyler. Straight from the top of my dome. Right? You guys remember that song? I saw a clip. There's that funny clip going around of the dude on the little shoe skate things. What do you call those things? And he's like freestyling it or whatever with his little shoe things, little shoe skates. What do you call those? I don't know. I'm not a Gen Z, so I don't know what you call those things. Yeah. Thank you, Real Cooter. Yeah, they're called the. And he's doing daffies and stuff, right? He's freestyling it. Straight from the top of my dome, right? So anyway, hold on. Yeah, so anyway, come on. Shouts out to everybody with your GMO drinks out there, man. You got to stop cracking these open for sure. I know. But I thought today, yeah, we would just freestyle it and we would do pure movie analysis of this film, Spiderhead. So the film stars His Hemsworth, right? Miles Edmund Teller and Journey Smouye. And basically, okay, so yeah, we're gonna take you through this. We're gonna do an analysis of the film. Of course, they're gonna be spoilers, right? Because we're gonna do a sort of an explication of the film. Yeah, I'm going to give an overview of the plot, and I'm going to take you through the plot, but really we're going to be talking about themes. So of course there's going to be spoilers, whatever, but it won't spoil it, you guys. In fact, I would say just right off the bat that the end of this film cannot be the original ending. It just can't be. I haven't read the short story, but it just cannot be the end. It's kind of got a typical Hollywood ending, but it doesn't even matter. The end of the movie does not matter because it doesn't reflect reality in terms of the world in which we live now. So I'll just dive into it. Let's talk about the film. So this film is about basically it begins with sort of an overhead shot of landscape. We're looking down as we do in a bunch of these movies, and normally if it's The Shining or like in Beetlejuice, when you have this POV shot and there's like a dark tone, we kind of think of, okay, like in The Shining, especially, there's like a demon right? That's going to inhabit the body of Jack Torrance or whatever. Or sometimes we get, a God's eye view. In this one, the view is of the God man. Because the character certainly sees himself that way. His Hemsworth, and he's in a hydroplane, and he's flying. The first thing we see is like the landscape below, and it's basically the spidery contours of the water moving through the land. So it's like an overhead view of like a river system, basically. Um, and you're kind of thinking, okay, it kind of looks like the Everglades or something. Um, it's the movie's filmed in Australia, and you quickly realize that it's Australian because, well, for a number of reasons, and that actually plays into what they're doing in the movie, the experimentation that's going on in the movie. I'll get to that in a little bit. But what happens is then we see a shot of Chris Hemsworth he's flying his own plane. He's short haired or whatever. He's all cleaned up, and then he lands in the water, and then he pulls right up to the dock, and we see this bunker system. Right, it's this gigantic bunker, this brutalist architecture, and it's obviously the near future. It's a dystopian future. And it reminds me of the same kind of bunker or the same kind of house in the movie Ex Machina. There are a lot of parallels with that movie. And then what happens is basically these two, the Gemini twins, these two buff Geminis come out, and they greet him, and he unlocks it says front door. He unlocks his front door with his iPhone, and a thumbprint. But the sign says Spiderhead Penitentiary System. And so obviously the Spiderhead literally is like the head of the river system or the mouth of the river, and how it sort of spiders in. But it's obviously the symbolism is that we're going to see that the people within this penitentiary or living in this bunker are sort of they're trapped in the spider web, and he's the spider. They can't. They are there. They volunteered to be there, but they can't get out. And he goes in, and then on the inside, in the interior, we see this is obviously, I mean, he owns the place. And what it is basically, it's a experimental facility where these inmates are living, each of whom has volunteered to be, they volunteered for a medical experimentation, just blatantly. And they had to like apply to be there. Now the question becomes like, is this real? Do these people know that they're there? Is this one of those situations? Remember that recent, like, I can't remember the name of it. It was that Julia Roberts show on, I think, on Prime maybe. And it was sort of the same thing. It was like the soldiers who have PTSD, and they're like living in this facility, and they're going through medical experimentation. You find out that it's like big pharma testing medication on them, and they're basically like reliving the same day. They have no memory, right? Or it's like it reminds you of Westworld, right? Where remember in the second season where they're basically trying to achieve the transhumanist dream of supplanting their consciousness into the body of a robot so that they can live forever. But what ends up happening is like this hellish living that, it's a forever, but it's like the same day over and over. Right. Well, this one's slightly different. And we immediately we meet Miles Teller, and what do you guys think of Miles Teller? I've always liked him. I don't know what other people think, but I think he's pretty cool. He's got like a cool look. That's why I've always liked him. Cause, he kind of reminds me of like, if you were going to cast, I mean, there's that new Elvis movie, right? That's coming out. I'm definitely going to see that because I love Elvis. But if I were going to cast, it's also really difficult to do an Elvis movie because I have a friend actually from drama school who played young Priscilla in an Elvis movie. It was like 2004. It was right after drama school. Her name's Antonia Bernath, and she was in it with not Cillian Murphy. Jonathan Rhys Davies played Elvis. Yeah. But it's really hard to do an Elvis movie because they can never get it right? They can never, there's so much to his life, and ends up being like a caricature. That's actually why I like. I don't know if I talked about this before in here. That's why I like the movie. We're freestyling it, guys. I'm just gonna freestyle today. Okay. That's why I like the movie The Doors, because after the film was made, uh, like John Densmore and Ray Manzarek and all them, they got mad at Oliver Stone. They signed over the rights to the film, basically, in the first place. But they were like, oh, we don't like the finished product because we don't like the way that you portray Jim in the movie, that he wasn't anything like that. And Oliver Stone was basically like, well, I don't give a shit, right? You signed the rights over. Okay. That means I have the right to make the film. And also, I'm aware that this is not factually how Jim Morrison was every day. This is my interpretation of how he was every day. I wrote the script and I was alive at the time. And this is my impression of him. And this is what like he meant in the popular conscience. So in other words, I can dig that. That's fine. He's like trying to distill the truth of the era and the person out of the factual events. He's not filming a diary or whatever. And so that's the thing with the Elvis movie. I hope it's like that. Anyway, I got on that little train, but what I was trying to say was, if I were going to film an Elvis movie, it's too late now in terms of Miles Teller, but I always thought Miles Teller would be a good Elvis. Do you know his musical? He was in what's the movie? Whiplash. Whiplash is like, he's so awesome in that movie, right? Where he plays the drummer. And he's kind of got the same profile, same look, but he's also got like these scars on him. Have you seen in real life? He's got this. Anyway, whatever, man. What I'm trying to say is, I think he's pretty cool. I've always liked him, and I really like him because he was cool in, not cool, but he was good in that show, which is basically like a 12-hour long movie by Nicholas Winding Refn called Too Old to Die Young. Shouts out to Jeth again. And that movie is the most, it's like, that show, it is a movie, but it's out of sequence purposefully. And like each episode is named after a major card, arcana in the tarot pack. The show is blatantly, it has OTO ceremonies in the show. It's very dark. And he plays a cop who moonlights as an enforcer, hitman, sort of serial killer, total sociopath. But it's like a neon drenched, like terror dream, neo David Lynch, 12-hour long movie involving cartels. And it's an impressionistic show. But I liked him after that. I thought he was pretty, was pretty magnetic in that. So anyway, he's in this. He's the protagonist. The guy who is presented as the protagonist, who right off the bat, Jeff says, do not watch that, y'all. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. Don't watch it thinking, oh, I'm going to get into this show. It's not like watching Stranger Things. It's very dark. But if you like that sort of thing, yeah, you can dig it. So, this one, you see Chris Hemsworth, and he's obviously the alpha character in the show, or in the film, Spiderhead. Right off the bat, though, that we are being presented with a kind of character irony, right? The dramatic irony in this is that right off the bat, if you have any discernment, that this guy is going to be the villain, right? And that Miles Teller, who is a prisoner here, who looks menacing and like he can handle himself, is certainly the beta character compared, when he's compared to Chris Hemsworth when they're next to each other, but is going to end up being the protagonist. So what happens is Chris Hemsworth, who stars basically as this new, like this what I think is the new archetype. This is probably a hot take, right? But he's probably the new archetype, or the coming archetype, of the oligarchical soy technocrat tech billionaire genius, right? We're moving away from the chicken neck ninny, according to AJ, right? The right, the Gil Bates. Now we're moving towards this era of the they're pushing the sort of alpha Chad, but he's a vegan, so he's a Chegan, right? Chris Hemsworth is I don't know if he is in real life, but it wouldn't surprise me. But he's like they show him living his life in this movie, and he's like drinking, like grass juice or whatever they do, and he's basically Deuce Juicer. Deuce Juicer here. He's Deuce Juicer. He's a Deuce Juicing Chegan. Okay. And he's all about like this healthy lifestyle and stuff, but he's obviously the he's the tech billionaire genius, right? And he has this veneer of being the nice guy, right? They're in this prison, and he makes a point of explaining this. He says, listen, man, you can trust me. I mean, wasn't I the guy who, when you had athlete's foot, I went to the mainland and I got you medicine, which is bullshit, because he's a number of times in the film, he'll be like, yeah, I'll go and I'll help you. And I'll go and check with the committee. And he'll go off to and he doesn't call the committee. He'll just talk to some random other person about nothing, and then come back in and be like, yeah, check. And he'll totally lie. Right. Everything he says is essentially a lie. You can tell that because his little assistant, whose name is Verlaine, and the literary allusion I assume we're supposed to get from this, pretty loose literary allusion, though. I'm sure the author, wanted to name drop Verlaine in there. Paul Verlaine. Paul Verlaine was the French creeper poet who was convicted. He was a convicted SODOMITE who essentially RAPED Arthur Rimbaud. But then he went to prison. He shot him. Actually, shot Rimbaud through the wrist, and Rimbaud ended up abandoning literature, going to Africa, exploring it, becoming a gun runner, and then died at 37. But the association also is that when that happened, Verlaine also was responsible for publishing Rimbaud's works and like sort of helped him to become the literary figure that he was. So I assume that's what this is, that he's kind of a beta figure to Chris Hemsworth, but he's also helping him do these experiments. Anyway, Chris Hemsworth is like, he's there to help everybody. He's like, look, he explains to us, the audience, that we already get it, but he's like, you could be back in you could be back in Gen Pop. You could be, he says to him, you could be playing catch and toss in Gen Pop, but instead you're here. You applied to be here in this prison. You applied for this program. You give your consent every time we're going to administer the dose. And so you wanted to be here. And he says, everything here is by choice. And, I'm here to help you. There's no other prison in the world where none of the doors are locked. You guys are free to do whatever you want. You're free to play music. You're free to play skee ball, he says. You're free to play video games and talk to each other and eat whatever you want and do all this stuff. There's nowhere else like that. So, they can go into each other's quarters, and Chris Hemsworth lives there. Okay. And the interior design of this place is like Jackie Treehorn's. He treats women like furniture, man. It's like that scene in The Big Lebowski where the dude sits on that long, it's like this modernist architecture on the inside. Now, it's also purely Australia. We know that it's filmed in Australia, but the fact that it's like the brutalist architecture bunker juxtaposed against the natural surroundings, and the way that this place is like there's the sea, or there's like a bay, or a mouth of a river, or whatever it is, and there's like nature behind them, and there's like this big steel hulking bunker, but it sort of is almost camouflaged, but it sort of juts out into the water. So it's like future but absorbed into nature, and it reminds me exactly of Ex Machina, the way that you remember Oscar Isaac's the dude has to go to Oscar Isaac's house, and it's all glass and steel, and it's tech and computerized, but it's also in nature. That one was filmed in Iceland, and they do that a lot, and they use Iceland as a setting a lot for these films. But this one's Australia, which makes sense because yes, okay, they filmed it in Australia because they wanted the tax credits and because they can make it look like Texas or any of these anywhere else. But in reality, I think it's the simulacrum, right? It's the fact that Australia, as we've seen, is the test colony. It's this test subject for what occurs, here, right? Do it there. That's the test, and then it occurs here. Look at the DEW fires, right? Look at the stabby. Look at the lockdown. All that stuff, right? And how that's sort of a test for here, Australia, New Zealand. Then we have Canada, right, with the GUNS, right, as a test subject. All these far-flung, colonies of the globalist oligarchy, right, or the Anglo-American establishment, sort of serve as test colonies, and that's what's happening in the film, literally happening in the film, but it's also what's happening in where the film is set. So what we see is we see Miles Teller come in, and he walks into this, he wakes up. He's in his sleeping pod, by the way. They sleep in little pods. I mean, it's a room, but it is a pod. And everything's computerized. They wake up to yacht rock every day. And they've got, this joyful music and stuff. Wake up. It's time to wake up, and they're playing Hall and Oates and stuff. And so then he goes in and he walks into the little test room. And on the other side of the looking glass is Chris Hemsworth and Verlaine. Yeah. And Chris Hemsworth is, he's like the, Alpha Chegan dressed in David Patrick Harry's outfits, right? I mean, he's dressed like he's all swagged out, right? Shouts out to DPH, the most swagged out wardrobe, right? I mean, but I couldn't help thinking, man, they should have just got DPH for this role, except for this guy's a what he is, right? They can't have DPH in there. And so anyway, he's like, he's like, how are you? And he's American in the movie. But he's like, right, how are you feeling today? Proof of life? Proof of life? No, he's like, how you feeling today? He's like, I'm all right. And what we see is that he basically says, all right, we've got it. We're going on a field trip today. So then the next scene is like this almost part of the Masonic quest where they blindfold him, right? And they put him on the boat outside, and he's in the middle of these twin towers of Yakin and Boaz, the Gemini twins, who are these swole ginger man bun guys. And they take the boat and they go across the bay. And then we see that, Hemsworth is standing there. He's got his iPad or basically an iPhone. And he's like, okay, today we're taking, I don't remember the numbers, but he's like, we're taking, B20 or whatever. Do you allow? They always have to say I allow or whatever. And what we find out is all the prisoners have this little pod pack in their spine. And it's got little vials, little morphine vials, but they're each different colors. And so he'll pick up the phone and he'll click the thing and then push it up, and it'll be N40 or whatever. And that will administer the dose to them. And every time you see a shot of his phone, and on the phone it says what he's giving, what the dose is. There's a little wheel, like an old iPod wheel on there. And at the bottom it says fatal. So we know that the drugs they're giving him are potentially fatal, and that this is a testing, right? They're testing them. But it's not only this isn't like a FDA test or whatever. This is obviously a more of a social engineering MK Ultra behavioral test, because we're going to see he later explicitly states he doesn't want to see the result of what the drug does to them or the interaction. They want to test. They want to monitor them. There's a miniature surveillance state. The whole thing is a surveillance state. They're living on prison planet essentially, and he wants to test the behavioral interactions amongst the other prisoners after the dose is worn off. Is the whole point, and that's the whole point at the beginning. So when he administers the dose to Miles Teller, he removes the blindfold or whatever, and he gives him. There are 3 drugs. There's Darkenflox, there's Lafadil, and there's verbal A's. No. Was it? What is it? Verbal. What is it? What's the other one? It's the verbal drug. Verbal lucis. It's got lucis in it. So it's like Lucifer or Lucifer. Right? And basically, the three drugs are: one is a happy, right? One is a verbal or cognitive, express themselves accurately. Because when he asked Miles Teller, like, what do you see? And you see his eyes light up, and it's like, you see that whatever he sees is like crystalline and beautiful. He's basically on like this opiated DMT peyote trip or something. And he's like, what does it feel like? And he's like, it feels fine, good. And then he increases the verbal, whatever that drug's name is. And then he's like, it's like every flower and angle was placed here. And he starts to, basically verbally describe this in a poetic fashion. But then we see that perception is, he's gone there with his blindfold, right? And it's like he removes the blindfold, but he still has a blindfold on because the other blindfold is the drug. And so what we, the audience, know now is that the drugs are testing people to live in a false reality, but to love it, because that he's actually looking at like a factory. He's like looking at a factory, like with smokestacks, and it's like all dirty. Now, the thing is, like, are we actually looking at that? Is that even real? Right? Because we have this sort of, the camera sort of serves as an unreliable narrator in this thing. Let's see what we just got here. Yeah, you guys look at my links that the mods are dropping, my beautiful mods there, and please, or in the video description, and think about supporting me. I really appreciate you. I appreciate everybody who supports me. I could really use it. Of course, we could all use it. But thank you so much for supporting me, everybody. And let's see what just dropped here. Hope you guys are having a good Father's Day out there. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day. Let's see. Something just came in. Yo, thank you. Shouts out to Matt out there. Shouts out to Maddie. $15, he says. Oh, yeah. Shouts out to the real Cooter Brown, my homeboy. Top-notch stream today, Kang. Hey, listen, I appreciate you, homeboy. I love you. And thank you so much. Yo, yes, you guys follow real Cooter Brown's example out there. And, a lot of people watch these streams after the fact. I can't blame them because, it's a busy Sunday. And if you're watching this later, don't hesitate to drop a coin your old homeboy's way here. Okay. I know I'm just babbling about this movie, but I think it's a good movie to break down here. So if I would recommend that you go and watch this movie afterwards. I'm sure probably people watching this have not seen it yet. It just came out. So yeah, you should definitely go and check it out and see if you agree or disagree with my analysis of the movie in the end. People always come up with stuff later. Like, for instance, by the way, my dumbass, I realized that after the Beetlejuice stream that I did with DPH, I saw one of the comments and somebody said, yo, that was not Cloris Leachman. That was Sylvia, whatever her name was, Sylvia Smith. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm an idiot. Like, I'm pretty good at movies and movie facts and people, but of course, when I'm babbling, there's so much that I'm saying that I tend to lose track. But I really did, in my mind, that whole time for years, I've thought that was Cloris Leachman. I didn't even double check, and it was not Cloris Leachman. So shouts out to the person that caught that one. And yeah, I admit, I got that one totally wrong. But you know what? The lady sounds damn just like Cloris. I'm going to bop you one, young fella. She sounds just like Cloris Leachman. And also her name is cool. So, but whatever. Yeah, I was wrong on that one. So if you're watching this later, and you get a different interpretation of the film or analysis, yeah, just put it in the comments below, man. I love to hear that stuff. So, all right. So let's get back to the film here. Right. Yeah. Shouts out to Jerry out there and Jeff, Jason, Kristen, Ellie, all my homeboys. So and girls, homeboys and homegirls. So what happens is, so we see the difference between perception and reality, and we see right away that analyze Ichi the Killer. Yeah, Jason, that'd be a good one to do. That one might be. I haven't seen that one in a long time, but that one is. I didn't know so much later that Ichi the Killer is named after the guy that ran that department in Japan, with the human experimentation thing. Speaking of human experimentation, right now, one of the other themes in this movie is the question of when is consent appropriate or accurate in terms of human experimentation. Now, that we explicitly learned that it's not. It doesn't even matter in these trials in the life of the film. And I'm going to relate that to some other texts and some things in a little bit in the stream. But what happens is he goes back and he's like, we can tell that he's kind of got this vacuum effect where like he's been, his brain has obviously been flooded with, endorphins or whatever with these drugs. And then they go back. The next scene is Miles Teller he goes into like the kitchen and he talks to Journey Smouye, who's the sister of Juicy. And she's in there and she's like, this cool, she's like this cool girl. And she's got like tie down or whatever. And she's on snack duty. They call it snack. And they all have like little duties or whatever. And she's like making the food. And then they walk around the common area of their brutalist pod, and they hand out the snacks to all the other inmates. We see one inmate. We can tell that some of the inmates are, in there for violent offenses. We don't quite know yet what Miles Teller's in there for. But what we learn is that he's in there because he killed. First, we think he killed his best friend because they show a scene where they're, like at a Texas trailer outside, but it's kind of a fancy hipster trailer. And they're outside in the woods. They're all drinking. And they're like, oh, let's go for a ride. And they get in his like old school, Cougar or whatever. And they go driving. And like a dumbass, he's this dumbass lightweight that swerves off the road and, crashed into a tree, kills his best friend. He flies through the windshield. So he flies through the windshield because he flies through the window mirror, right? And his psyche is fractured because later on we learn he doesn't actually remember accurately what happened until later when he's been tortured by this drug experimentation and this darkened flocks. And he learns that, or we learn, and he comes to this sort of the center of the maze and finds out that he didn't just kill his best friend, he killed the girl that he loved because she was in the back seat. We didn't see her in the back seat at first. He flies through the windows. His psyche's fractured. He wakes up at night. Then he tries to get his best friend out of the car. He pulls him out. The guy's already dead. He looks in the back seat, and his girl's back there. She's alive. He can't pull her out, and the engine's on fire. The car explodes, and we see it in his face, his eyes. We witness him witnessing the great burning conflagration of his own mind and the events of his life because he's killed the two people that he loved. And essentially, he gets sentenced to he gets 4 life sentences or something. And then after that, we learned that, he's gone through this process and he's applied for this experimentation. That just reminded me of Terminator Salvation, which I think is totally an underrated film. I think it's a really well done film. That's the one where Christian Bale, son-in-law of Gloria Steinem, remember from the CIA Gloria Steinem in real life, right? Remember that from the Lunar Park stream? Anyway, remember when Christian Bale was on the set of Terminator Salvation and he got in all that berating somebody for not miking him or not lighting him correctly on the set? Of course, that was studio PR to drum up interest for the film, as if it needed it. It was a really good film. That movie also has Here They Come, Snuff the Rooster, right? Alice in Chains plays in that one part. But remember, the reason I'm talking about it now is because the beginning of that film is where we learn that Sam Worthington is on death row, and at the very beginning, he volunteers his body for a. Are we buffering? We should be fine. We should be good. If we're not, somebody else let me know. Is audio good? Audio good, you guys? Yeah, okay. We should be good. Yeah, I think, and the audio video was pretty good in the last one. I saw that it was buffering for people, but my end was pretty good. Which is weird. But anyway, so Sam Worthington, like, he volunteers himself for this transhumanist medical experimentation where they've basically I guess they've uploaded his consciousness or whatever, and he wakes up. They've given him this new body, right? And then he has to, at the end of the film, he confronts Arnie, who is the Terminator, and it's like that's when they had face swap technology, when it was kind of new, and they had like young Arnie on like a new young body in the film. Anyway, so what was I saying? So okay, so he meets the girl, and we can tell that like he really likes this girl, right? She's a girl for him. We don't know what she's in there for though, and we'll learn that in a little bit. And yes, he did. Yeah, Ellie, he did. He thanked Satan for an award. I think it was when he played Dick Cheney, right? He won for that. He won something for that Dick Cheney movie. But I've heard that I've heard Christian Bale's Orthodox. Is that true? I don't know. Of course, he did thank Satan in that speech, so whatever. Anyway, won't get into that. So Hollywood. So anyway, yes, exactly, Jerry. So anyway, then the next scene is where we get into the Operation Midnight Climax MK Beta sex kitten aspect of the film, which is where he goes back into the experimentation pod room. Chris Hemsworth, his Kremsworth and Verlaine guy are on the other side of the looking glass. He's got all these screens, and he's talking so nicely to them. He's like, "Yeah, come on in." And then this hottie walks in or whatever, and she sits in the chair across from him. And at first you're like, no, it's not going to be like this. But in the back of your mind, you're thinking, what's going to happen here? And he asks the two of them, like, okay, give me your immediate impression. What do you think of each other? She's like, oh, he asked him first. He's like, oh yeah, she's a 7. And she's like, oh yeah, he's like a 5. And then he uploads the love drug or whatever, and the truth serum. And then like they immediately like, they basically they start going at it right there in the room, and they record everything. Okay. And it's obviously these two are, it's perverts, right? But the weird thing is that you're assuming watching this that these are medical pharmaceutical trials, and that they are simply not they're just not going to interfere with whatever's happening, but that's like not the point, even though you kind of know that they did that on purpose. But you're also assuming that the Chris Hemsworth guy is accountable to a committee or to that he's going to have oversight. I don't know why you would think that, because we know that's not true, but I guess it's because he literally says in here that, that there's that he has to get approval from the board or the committee for everything he does. Now, you later learn that there is no committee, there is no board, and that he owns the pharmaceutical company. And one thing that's revelatory of this is his name is something Abnesti, Abnesti. And I was thinking, like, what does this mean? What does this name mean? Is this an anagram or something? What does this name mean? But then I learned Nesti, Nesti is the national. Hold on, I looked it up. It's the national, and I think the author of the short story might have worked for this. It's the national. It's the Working Party of National Experts on Science and Technology Indicators. Okay, the AB is that he is moved away. He's unaccountable to them. Nesti in Russian means to be responsible or to account for or to incur losses. we're questioning what are the losses that he's going to incur. Well, what do you think the losses are going to be? The losses are going to be human losses. There's going to be a loss of human life. And after these two, after Miles Teller and the blonde girl or whatever, have sex under supervision, under surveillance, that's when he tells the Verlaine character, the assistant, all right, keep watching them, and I want you to see how they interact with others. So because what happens is, in the aftermath of their liaison, the two tell each other that they love each other, but we know that this is a result of the drugs, right? And he says blatantly, Chris Hemsworth says, imagine if we could have a world where everyone would like love each other, and we can make everyone love each other, and there would be no more crime, and there would be no more violence, right? Well, yeah, imagine if we had a world like that, right? We could have a world like that, right? Where people could love thy neighbor as you love yourself, right? Right? To give yourself to others with true love and charity. But that's not what they want. They want a love where they've socially engineered everybody through pharma to have sex with everyone else, right? And to degrade themselves and to be controlled, right? And then, of course, because he's testing the love drug, we also later learn that he's going to be testing the hate drug, but it's worse than that. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare MK Ultra mind splitting torture drug called Dark Influx. And like he threatens. We see a glimpse of Miles Teller having been through this Dark Influx trial, and essentially it makes you into a demonic, stuttering, psychotic, right? Where you face your worst fears, and you either self-destruct, you MK Omega and self-destruct, or you start killing, whatever, right? And so, yeah, they're basically, Jason, they're basically like, these people are basically just trial animals. And the fact that the Chris Hemsworth like character, like works under the guise of being like the nice guy, right? And this is different from the chicken neck knitting nice guy, right? Get those numbers down, right? That's like the trustworthy like nerd archetype, right? Where, oh, this guy can't hurt us, but of course, like Isaac says, right, these nerds are going to kill us. This is like oh, now we've got the strong buff guy who's also a vegan soy, but who has no real feelings about anyone, manipulation, and everything is an experiment because he wants total power and control. We learn that that I'm going to kind of skip ahead here. Okay, all right. So they had the love drug. Okay, so one more thing is with Miles Teller, like basically having sex with all the women in the thing in the same experiment. So he tests him with her, and he tests him with the other women. And the other women, like there's one woman who's like an old, like cracked out meth head, and he has to have sex with her. It's like, and then he puts him in the room. This part was funny. This guy comes in who looks like he kind of looks like Toe Cutter or something, or he looks like the guy in the movie Troy. Remember that Brad Pitt killed at the beginning of the film, the gigantic guy. He looks like that guy, and this guy actually has a spider head. He's got like a spider web tattooed on half of his head. He's got like half of a face tattooed on one side. He's this big guy. And he comes into the room, and Miles Teller's like, no, because obviously we think like, oh no, they're going to test the drug on them, on those two of them. And guess what the dude's name is? The guy's name is Rogan. Yeah, so I'm sure that's an accident, right? They test this bald, hulking, psycho, right? And they name him Rogan in the film. Okay, right, nice. Okay, so anyway. But then he says, no, don't worry. We're not going to test the two of you or whatever. And he's like, okay. But I think he probably did anyway. Right. Which means that he gives him the drug, and he's going to make him do the thing that he is repulsed by. Right. He is his whole being is antithetical. He has a strong belief he doesn't want to do this thing, right? But we know that the drug is going to make them do that very thing. Now, they don't show that, but I think that is sort of implied. What happens then is we see them living their lives, going through all this stuff, and we learn that Chris Hemsworth also has the little pod pack himself in his spine, and he goes up into his room and he's doing this. He does. Remember that great scene in Ex Machina where Oscar Isaac like dances with the robots, and he's like, dance with her. Come on, man. And the guy's like, you tore up her papers, man. You tore up her drawing. And he's like, I'm going to tear up the fucking dance floor. And then he does that dance. And it's really creepy and it's weird and it's dystopian, but like, it's like a funny moment in Ex Machina, right? There's also, basically Chris Hemsworth sort of does that, but he's on his own. He does a weird kind of ballet dance, like up in his own pod. And we see that it's because he's administering his own drugs. He's self-medicating himself. So he's taking the Lafadil or whatever because he lies down on his bed. He's like, whoa. And there's another scene which reminded me of the movie or of the show Devs, Devs. If you haven't seen Devs, I don't know. I mean, I thought it was great. I thought it was amazing. The very end was a disappointment, but that is another show where it's about quantum theory, big tech, sort of a megalomaniacal, tech nerd genius. And there's the imagery in that show is like, you really should watch that show. If you're into this stuff, you guys, you should watch the show Devs. And spoiler alert, it's written by Alex Garland. And you can tell right from the beginning what is Devs, DEVS. Well, you think of computer technology, but Alex Garland had just done Ex Machina, Deus Ex Machina, but it's Ex Machina. Then he did Annihilation, and then we get the show Devs, and Devs is just the Latin form, the Latinate spelling for Deus, because the guy's trying to play God, right? He's trying to create life. So there's a scene in this which kind of steals the imagery, which is where he's up in his pod room with his assistant. He's talking about like, no, give me more drugs or whatever. And in the window mirror of his, bay window, you can see a reflection of a halo. And the halo is obviously, so we're only seeing the halo by reflection, but the halo is in his own pod and it's sort of over their heads. So in other words, in their minds, they think, in his mind at least, he thinks that he is a saint or a god. He thinks that he can control life, but it's only by looking in the reflection, right? It's not actually in reality. We don't actually see it. And that reminded me of Devs because there are a number of scenes in Devs with the halo imagery that occurs, I think, in the first episode where they're in the woods and Ron Swanson, who is really good. Ron Swanson playing against type, plays this, murderous, sort of psychopathic tech guy and has his assistant kill this Russian. And the trees like all have halos, these weird neon halos on them, right? Yo, shouts out to Thomas. What's up, buddy? What's up, everybody? Yo, what's up, Smiling Conqueror? What's up, everybody? Yeah, thank y'all for coming in. Thanks for dropping in. Y'all, please don't forget to, of course, obligatory, smash that like, please. Appreciate you out there. I think everybody has here. And please don't forget to, just leave me a comment for the algorithm down there. And go back to my stream that I did. Was that just yesterday? Go back to the one that I did yesterday on, what did we do yesterday? Aleister Crowley part 2. And please leave a comment. Just leave an algo comment. Okay. It helps me with the algorithm. Thanks to everybody who's a new sub, who's dropped in lately. You guys, please help me keep getting the subs up so we can get up to 1,000 and get super chats. Please support me. Drop me a couple of bucks. Drop me $5, $10, $100, $1 on Cash App, PayPal, Venmo. I really appreciate it, you guys. Today we're discussing again the brand new movie on Netflix, Spiderhead. Okay, so we're about 3/4 through the discussion of the film now. So what happens then is he's presented with a choice. We see that the prisoner is presented with a choice, and that's Miles Teller. He comes in and he's on the other side of the looking glass with Chris Hemsworth, and he says, and they bring in the blonde girl into the test pod, and they say, okay, well today, it's been decided that we have to give one of these two women darken flocks, right? And the darken flocks is, the names are they're obvious in this, but and he says, do you want us to which one do you want to give it to? And Miles Teller's like, I don't want to give it to either one. And he says, okay, now is that a result of the fact that you have sex with both of them, right? Or is it something else? And he says, no, it's actually just, I don't really care about either. I don't have any feelings for either of them, which is revelatory because remember, the feelings were artificial. They were made to happen. Yes. So then what happens is he says, all right, well, we'll choose for you. We're going to give it to, and then he picks one of the girls and he looks at Miles Teller, and Miles Teller has this kind of blank look on his face. And he's like, okay. And then he says, okay, never mind. We're actually not going to give it to either one. We wanted to see what your reaction would be. So the whole thing is a test. Yes, everything's a test. And we know from watching any of these films, you should know from any of these films or any of these books that when the characters are in a test, when they're in a test pod, when they're in the simulation, right? We should know that the real test is going to be something unspoken or behind the test, or the test is going to be the part of the test that's not the obvious test. In other words, it's not going to be the two people who are being physically tested with the medicine. It's going to be the motivation behind the test or the decision-making process for the other people. Does that make sense? So what that means is he later will bring back the characters, or he brings back the blonde girl, and he says, listen, I took this to the committee, and the committee said that the parameters for the test weren't good enough. So they've determined that we have to give her the darken flocks. Now we know that Miles Teller he doesn't want her to be administered this medication because it's a psychosis medication, right? And this is real, this is like real, Mangala trauma bonding MK Ultra territory. This is like, there wasn't any blatant MK Ultra stuff in terms of there wasn't the administration of a constant electroshock electroshock at maximum voltage, multiple times a day, combined with lethal doses of LSD and you and Cameron sleep therapy and all that, and then the trauma bonding and the mind splitting of Martin Orne and Esther Brooks and Jose Delgado and all that. But there is it's like that, but it's synthesized in the future where it all takes place in a controlled system under the illusion of choice, right? So you remember that the whole reason that Brave New World is so insidious and is so much probably more accurate than 1984 in a way, in terms of what has come to pass, under the great RESET, is that the real control, right, is not like 1984, where in 1984, we have these characters who, 1984 is just as accurate in a number of ways, right, and revelatory. But in 1984, the vision of the future is essentially that, you have everybody who is being forced into this system, and they have the 15 minutes of hate and all that stuff, and then we got the underground people, and but it's the fact that they know that they're slaves, right? The what's more sinister than that would be a Brave New World where the people are slaves and they want to be, right? They live in a world where they can't imagine not being slaves. Their slavery is like, they think that their enslavement is liberating to them, right? Because they love it. They're provided with soma, right? Just like in this, they're provided with these drugs. They're provided with mindless games. They're provided with video games and skee ball. They live in their pod. They have free sex. They have communal living. They've got nature around them. They've got everything they want in a sense. And the only thing that's holding them back is the fact that they're criminals and they could go back into Gen Pop, even though we never see the general population, and we don't even know that these people were actually in prison. How do we know that they're not just kidnapped slaves or bought, right, by this guy? And actually, what we find out, we're sympathetic to the Journey Smouye character, the girl, but he makes a point of bringing out the fact that he says, "Have you even read her file? Do you even know what she's in here for?" And now the moral thing in this would be that Miles Teller, and he kind of hints at this, would be that he would say, "Look, I'm in here for murdering my two best friends, and I have no right to judge another person. We're all here in the same situation. Whatever she did will not determine whether I want to torture her or not, right?" But we find out. I mean, we certainly, I watched it. I was like, yep, no sympathy, because she says when she goes into the pod, they're going to give her Darken Flocks. She says she's the girl who killed her baby, right? She says she left her 9-month-old in the car while she went into Walmart to go to work for 3 hours. So it's like, okay, so they're fitting in this like sort of topical thing, and they tried to smooth. They gave us a horrible thing, and then they pulled it away by giving us like mitigating circumstances. But those aren't mitigating circumstances. Fuck this lady, right? Yeah, she sucks, but I don't want to give her this. I don't want to torture her, right? That's not. I'm not here to be her judge in this little prison planet pod or whatever, right? She'll be judged for what she did, and anyway, so she says, just give it to me, give me the Darker Flocks, because you can't do anything worse to me than I already live with every day. It's like, well, okay, but anyway, yeah. So so they give it to her, and she immediately like ties a belt around her neck. She tries to hang herself. Now, earlier in the film, when he was presented with the choice about the girl, and then the next day, the blonde girl that he had sex with comes back in, she ends up going insane. Like she goes insane because of the medicine they gave her, and she starts like running around the room and stuff, and she ends up knocking loose her little medicine pod in her spine. And what that does is, the guy warned earlier that like you got to be careful with it because it can flood your system with the drugs, and it flooded it, and then they can't control it, and she's like overdosed on this Darken Flocks, and she breaks a chair or something. She's got like a weapon in her hand, and of course she goes MK Omega mode, and she stabs herself in the neck and kills herself, and blood sprays all over the window. And of course, the blood spraying on the window is the psychic mirror window to the mind. And Miles Teller that's when he sort of disassociates and goes back in time and sees what he did to his girlfriend or wife. Yeah, MK Omega, there are like 5 stages. It's in I think it's in John Marks. John Marks's Search for the Real Manchurian Candidate, and it's in like the church committee hearings for the declassified documents from MK Ultra, that there were 5 programs, 5 essential programs. And I'm not talking about the sub projects, but the 5 like programs in terms of programming in MK Ultra. There's MK Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, and Omega. MK Alpha was like I think just generic MK, like an MK Ultra. The MK Delta is the Super Soldier program. MK Beta is the Springmeier Beta Sex Kitten program. Gamma was maybe that was Messenger or Manchurian Candidate. I can't remember what that one was. And Omega was the self-destruct mechanism. So remember in that movie Telephone with Charles Bronson, right? Or in remember The Naked Gun, right? Where they get the code, the programming code, and they're supposed to assassinate and then end themselves. That's like an MK Omega programming. So that's what she does. And And then what happens? So then we learn that Chris Hemsworth. So when that happens, when the girl kills herself, he Hemsworth and the assistant run in to go check on the girl who's now dead, and they're going, "Oh no, what do we do? What do we do?" And we know that like he's only upset because he's lost a test subject. It's not because he cares about the human life. Because look what he's doing to these people. But what happens is we kind of see a form of like a Chekhov's gun, and because earlier we see a shot of Chris Hemsworth. He's always got this like notebook he's writing notes in, and we see him put it in a box in a drawer and then lock it. And when he runs out to go check on the girl, he drops his keys on the floor, and Miles Teller turns and looks and sees the keys, gets up, runs, gets the keys, comes back, opens, puts the key in the lock, unlocks it, and pulls out the notebook. What do you think is going to be in the notebook? The notebook's going to have all the notes for what these people are in for and what they're doing. But what we learn, and he does this real quickly, what we learn is that the name of the pharmaceutical company is Amnesty, which is his name. He owns the pharmaceutical company. He is not a spokesman or a manager for the pharmaceutical company. Is audio not working? Audio should be good. Is audio good? Yeah. So he owns the pharmaceutical company. And what we also learn is, Kathy O'Brien. What we learn is that the names of the drugs, right? They were like B40, B6, G47 or whatever. The names of the drugs are arbitrary. Well, they're not arbitrary. You would think they were arbitrary, but they are determined by a bingo card. He's got like a bingo card in his little notebook. And anytime anybody does well in a thing, he gives them a gold star. And all you see is him putting a gold star in their file. And you think that enough gold stars and they get rewards or whatever, and then they'll get out of this thing. But what we learn is that like the gold stars simply go on the bingo card. I thought this was like a kind of a good turn on like a trope, because like remember the thing in 2020 was everybody always saying like, I didn't see mass surveillance on my bingo card for 2020. And I always thought when people did that, I always hated that expression. Because the fuck is a bingo card? Like, I know what a bingo card is. Excuse my language, folks. I know it's a family show. Excuse me. And I know it's a Sunday, and I know it's Father's Day. All right. Excuse me. But the bingo card, man, like, all right, look, like I've played bingo before, right? But it's not like, the mass thing now is like everybody going to play bingo in the bingo hall. That's like, what the elderly did like in, 1988 or something. Right. And I mean, I get it. Like that's a cultural trope, but like, why is that the standard marker? Like, why is that? It's weird that people always like brought up the bingo card thing. Right. I just thought that was annoying. So I thought it was kind of clever that he used this bingo analogy or whatever. And that's obviously horrifying because it shows that the people in the subjects of this medical, and like mind-splitting terror experimentation are just numbers on a bingo card. They mean nothing. And like they're there for him to win the prize. And the prize for him will be the final test results of the experimentation, the selling of the drugs, right? The mass selling of the drugs, possibly making it into a stabby. Now, this plays into the real life correlations with this film, which would be this was admitted by, remember when Bill Clinton gave that press conference, right? And the U.S. government rewarded the families of the Tuskegee experiments, right? And the people who were who had volunteered to be test subjects in prison for instance, remember the Jonas SALK stabbies that had plutonium backs on them. Part of MK Ultra, this was admitted and was in the white papers, was in church hearings, a number of books, is that they would take prison populations and they would say, hey, look, you guys are in prison. You guys are addicted to heroin. how about you sign up for this experiment we're doing? And if you sign up, we'll give you better food, better drinks. You'll get a better place to sleep, and we'll give you free drugs. They promised them free drugs, and the guys were like, "Hell yeah, let's do it." Well, what they did was they gave them, like, let's say they'd give them, heroin for like 2 days, right? And then they would take it away and make them go through withdrawals. Then they would give them maximum doses of LSD for like 49 days straight in hellish torture and agony, right? And then they would use this as part of their MK Ultra research. And then if people died, whatever. If they didn't, they have no morality, because his Hemsworth says in the film, he continuously does this like moral false equivalency. He says, "Look, man, you got to approve that we give this girl this Darkenflox, because if we give it to her, nobody will ever have to suffer these kinds of feelings ever again, because we read into it, because I, the billionaire genius pharma oligarch, right, am going to make this required of everybody, and then everybody will be on these SSRIs and all this stuff forever, and nobody will ever have any kind of feelings like this again, and we'll live in this global utopia." Right? That's the whole point. That's actually not the whole point, because there's a further point that he makes later on. But it's like he puts it on him, right? Even though he knows, and he says that he keeps saying like the greater good, right? Which is this idea of like, we're going to sacrifice this one person for the greater good. Now, we saw in Dante's Inferno, right? Remember, again, we saw a scene in Dante's Inferno where they came across the guy in like the 8th circle of hell, who was the governor of the town. And the guys were going to come. This happened in real life, like in the 14th century, 13th century. The guys were going to come and they were going to invade the town. And they said, "Okay, we won't invade the town and sack the town and kill everybody if you give us one person." So they picked out one guy and they gave them to the invaders, and they sacrificed him, right? The invaders killed him, and he saved the town. But now that guy is responsible for the murder of the one guy. So Dante sees him in hell because he didn't have to do that. Why didn't he sacrifice himself, first of all, right? So anyway, Miles Teller obviously has a problem with this. But what he sees also is that he sees that the only part on the bingo card that hasn't been gold starred is called B6. Now, later on, kind of skipping ahead here, later on, what we learn is that B6 is the name of the ultimate drug that he's testing. All the other drugs were not really being tested. He already knew he was going to use those. It was the B6 that he was testing. And what we learn is that the B6 is called, the name for it that he chose is OBDX. And so it means OBDX, right? It's an obedience drug. And what he says is that, listen, all the other drugs, the happiness drug, the truth drug, the psychotic murder, hellscape drug, are all just byproducts. What we wanted to test, he says we in it, what we wanted to test was an obedience drug where we could make everybody in the world take this obedience drug, and we could control everyone. Nobody. And what he means by obedience is, he says this blatantly in the film. He says, we could make people do the exact thing that they were most against, right? Which is the whole point of the Manchurian Candidate and of MK Ultra, right? Which was to break people down, to break their minds, to break their psyche and their soul, and to make them do the thing that they were most against, right? And so the question becomes like, in reality, right? It's to get to a place where the people in control want people to do those things, but they want them to want to do them, right? Which is like a stronger form of control. But in the film, it's worse, but in my opinion, it's kind of not as bad, because it's like, no, it's just this world domination thing of everyone's going to take this drug and they'll be like mindless robots, right? When in reality, it's more sinister than that. But he says, if we could get this approved, if we could win this over, right? In other words, if you're in here for killing your two best friends, right? And I could give you this OBDX drug, and make you do the same thing again, right? Even though you're so against, your whole body and soul are against it, because he has this remorse, right? His whole body and soul are against it. If he could do that, then he knows that the drug works. Well, what ends up happening in the film is he gets the assistant character to spike Chris Hemsworth's medicine pod in his spine with Darkened Flocks and the other drugs. So then Miles Teller in one of the experiments gets a hold of the phone and then like spikes Chris Hemsworth with it, and he controls him. And then they fight. They get away. Chris Hemsworth gets away. He tells the other inmates that, like, on the like intercom, that Miles Teller and the girl have done, have escaped or whatever. And then Chris Hemsworth goes, he gets to the plane and he flies off, right? And the film is bookended with the plane. Like, it begins with him landing, descending, and then it sort of ends with him ascending. But then it finally ends with a descent, because he's been spiked with this euphoria drug, right? And he flies, he big nine events himself straight into the side of a mountain. And so he MK Omegas himself, essentially. And this is why I think that the film does not end. It cannot end like that originally. It surely was much darker than that. And it gets this, sort of weird Hollywood ending where Miles Teller and the girl drive off in the boat into the sunset. And they're like, oh, we're free now. And also it has this stupid thing, which they do in every movie, which is the solution is going to be, you guys, listen, we've been under this experimentation and this evil guy has controlled us. What do we have to do? Well, we got to go tell the press. We're going to go call the police, tell the press, and we're going to tell the world, and they're all going to come down on you. And in reality, it's like, no, man, the guy's a billionaire. He owns this prison planet thing. He has literal human slaves in this that he bought for human experimentation, right? He owns Big Pharma. And you don't think he has bought off the police? You don't think he owns this whole place? You don't think he, owns the Mockingbird Press and all this stuff? But of course, in the movie, the Verlaine guy like escapes, and you see him coming back with the like Australian police on the boat, like, oh, we're going to shut down this island, kind of like in the movie Old. That was I put that in the notes for the video. Remember in the movie Old? Like, spoiler for the movie Old, right? Which was a M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong movie. They, that this is a big pharma experiment. They're testing these drugs on these people. Everyone who's gone through them, the trials, has died. And they're trying to see if they could fast forward the physical body of the people, like, so that they can, supposedly cure some disease. We find that out at the end of the movie. And they've been under surveillance the whole time. And then of course, like, the guy escapes, gets back to the hotel. He's got the notes. He gives them to like a cop, and then the cop calls the guy and he like arrests the people at the hotel. When in reality, it's like, no, man, if they own the hotel and they own the island and they own the ocean and they own Big Pharma and they own the labs with the, black and white checkerboard floor and the, unification of opposites, and they own the system and they own everything. You don't think they own the police? I mean, anyway. So the movie ends with them, driving off, in the water, into the sunset, and everything's okay. And it ends with like, Hall and Oates. And so I liked this movie. I thought it was entertaining. And of course it was another revelatory movie. And I liked, I appreciate, I guess, watching it with a critical eye and appreciating like some of the things that I think that are the predictive programming elements, the things that are coming in the future, and the like sort of new archetypes. And of course the old things that are just always, it's the most dangerous game. Again, it's basically the most dangerous game again in a movie. This is the constant theme that we get in the movies, because that's the world that we live in, right? We live in this world where, people are the guinea pigs, etc. And it's sort of a watered down, long con form of the most dangerous game. So, yeah, exactly, Maddie. So what did you guys think? I think it's, I liked the stylistic elements of this movie. I liked the musical choices. Of course I love yacht rock. And I thought that it was good, this juxtaposition between like, the happiness and the positivity of like the yacht rock and the Hall and Oates and all that stuff. I don't think they played Christopher Cross in it, sailing, but they should have. You can hear Michael McDonald. You can hear Michael McDonald going off in the back sometimes. Um, I liked the I like the set design and the architecture. I even like the font because the font is sort of like a Miami Vice 80s vaporwave, like positive font. And you just know that this is supposed to be ironic because it's going to be a dark movie. And I just, I thought it was a pretty good up until the end. I thought it was a good effort. In terms of the output of Netflix, I think Netflix like started off so good, you guys, didn't it? Quickly went downhill, right? Of course, because it's Bernays and what's that guy's name, Randolph or whatever. But I thought it was good, and yeah, it's too creepy. I mean, yeah, the movie is certainly creepy, but it's weird because it doesn't feel. I can imagine the average person watching this movie and not thinking that it was creepy, right? But that might add to the creepy factor. More blatant examples of this would be like, Jacob's Ladder is kind of the same thing. What are some other examples? I thought of so many examples. The title of this, Pressure Forms Diamonds, right? That's what something Chris Hemsworth says in it, right? He's like, look, it's basically like, look, we got to put maximum pressure on these people in terms of this experimentation because pressure forms diamonds after all. And it's like, okay, but in that instance, you're assuming that you are the magnetic, demigod power of the volcanic earth, and that you have the power, that you as a human being, as a man thinking you're a god, have the power to make something like, right, like Ordo ab Kaio or something, when in reality, you're just a monster. And again, this is another form of, it's almost like Gnostic imitation, right? So yeah, so that's Netflix went downhill when they stopped mailing out the DVDs. Oh yeah, I forgot to point out in the Beetlejuice stream, I forgot to point that out. Beetlejuice was the first DVD that Netflix mailed out. Did you guys know that? And I actually had Netflix and I had Blockbuster mailing service back. Remember, because Blockbuster started doing it when Netflix came out. And when I lived in New York, I would I'd go online, order Netflix DVDs. They come in the mail. Right? They come in a little sleeve in the mail. You had them it took about 3 days to get to you. Then you watch the movie, and then you had about 3 days, you could return it whenever you wanted, I think. You could get 3 movies at a time. And I thought that was cool because I could get DVDs that I couldn't get anywhere else. But of course the problem is like if you don't return it, then you get charged like $100 or something. And then that quickly went out of style because later in like 2007, remember they had the big war was between HD, DVD, and Blu-ray. You guys remember that? And the thing was that I think it was Xbox played. I didn't have Xbox or anything, but Xbox played HD DVDs, and the new PlayStation played Blu-rays. And you just knew that Blu-ray would win out because it's got a cooler name, right? It's a Blu-ray. That's just, it sounds cooler. And then even that went away, right? Now everything's digital. Of course, the digital catalog will go away and it'll just be Neuralinked, right? You'll have the entire chosen library, right, uploaded on your Neuralink, right? You'll pick it on your eyeball Google Glass or whatever. You guys remember the Google Glass? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only difference between Blu-ray and DVD, well, one is that Blu-ray has, supposedly the clearer picture quality, but it also has the wide, right? Because DVDs tend to do what they do when they show films on TV back in the day, which is they cut, it's a letter like this when you see it in the cinema, right? And then when they show it on the TV, they have to cut off the sides. And that's often what happens. Like, remember in the old days when you're watching like Predator on TNT or something, and you're watching it, and then it'll like shift over here, but it's not the camera shifting; it's the view of the camera shifting. Yeah, it's a crop screen, so they do that so they can fit it all in there. And that Blu-ray had like letterbox edition or whatever. And then also Blu-ray, I think Blu-ray you could there was something you could skip faster in there. But even so, whatever. Now everything's digital. So, anyway, what did you guys think? You think that was good? You guys, shouts out to everybody who's here. Shouts out to everybody watching later. I thought that the part 2 of the Crowley stream was I thought that went pretty well. I'm kind of glad, even in hindsight, that I didn't go too far in depth into the really nasty parts. And watching, I watched a guy years ago he was this boomer, and he would read a chapter of the Phoenix program every week. He had it was like 3 people in the live stream. He had a live stream. It was like 3 people, and he'd get on there, and he had this mustache, and he'd be like, well, good morning, friends. The birds are chirping. It's a nice day in Baltimore, and we're going to read chapter 3 of Valentine's Phoenix program. And I was annoyed because when he would read it, he would not read the text. He wouldn't read the bad parts, right? Which is why you want to read the book. Of course, you could just go and read the book, which I did anyway. But with Crowley, I feel like it's a little different because they're so bad. And because, any any quick research will tell you those specific things that I left out, especially the elements involved in the rituals. And yes, Maddie, this is, my flip shirt, my old school flip skateboarding shirt, and my mystery hat. Yeah, I'm a 41-year-old who still wears skateboarding gear, right? No, but it's cool. It's cool stuff. Right? Yeah. I'm not wearing my Airwalks or something. I'm wearing my Sperry's. So, but yeah, I just still like the t-shirts and the hat. Yeah. So, you guys, don't forget to, be like real Cooter Brown out there and support me. Drop me some coin, you guys. It is the heat of the summertime. I know everybody's working out there, and we're living in sort of the hell world of the rising prices and all that, and that's never going to stop. Well, at least in the near future, right? It's going to keep getting worse. I hate to say, I'm not trying to blackmail anybody, but we all know that it's going to keep going. We're going to keep having the old Soviet style grocery stores, right? At least in the Soviet Union, right? At least they were aware that it was happening to them, right? They're like, no, it's happening, and they're making it happen. Here, right? No, everybody's like, no, nobody knows why it's happening. Nobody out there or whatever. But anyway, drop me some coin, you guys. Drop me some comments. Appreciate it. Drop me some recommendations, some thoughts. If you've got any, if you got anything else to add about this movie or whatever, you can always, of course, email me, madmaximalism, 2x's @gmail.com, right? Thank goodness, I don't know where you guys live, but thank goodness the the SIGs haven't gone. The SIGs are still good where I live. Of course, I live in VA, right, where Philip Morris is, and so we're good. But I don't know, I can't imagine New York or California or something paying $25 for a pack of cigarettes. That's ridiculous. All right, they're like $6 where I live. But everything else, right? Yeah, you go and go buy a dozen eggs, right? They were like 75 cents, a year ago or whatever. Now they're like $3. I smoke Marlboro mediums. They used to be called Marlboro mediums. Now they're Marlboro red labels, right? You go to the store and you're like, yeah, give me a pack of, may I please have a pack of Marlboro red labels? And they always go shorts or hundreds. I'm like, no, man. If I wanted hundreds, I would ask for them. I want short. I'm not gonna be smoking no Virginia Slim 600. Come on now, right? The guy who created the Marlboro Man was my neighbor. One of the most successful advertising programs of all time. The guy who came up with the Marlboro Man, right? Of course, it was Bernays who came up with the whole smoking thing, right? But no, Bernays did not live near me. It was the guy who created the Marlboro Man. Anyway, let's see. Somebody just dropped a fat chat. Wait, hold on. What did you say there? Somebody said something. Let's see. I saw my name in there. said, I have 15 beer bottles that can be deposited for 1.5 to what address do I send them, Baselit? I'm trying to think of a funny address to which to send them. Um, I can't even come up with anything clever and funny for that one. Yeah. Send them to why don't you send them to FEMA Camp 322 in the Acid Rain District in the Outlands. All right. They'll know what that means. Let's see. Somebody sent me something here. Let's find this. There's my homeboy. Thomas Henderson drops $10 on PayPal. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate you. Cooter Brown says, LOL, back when I used to smoke, that was the perk of switching to American Spirits and not getting asked hundreds of shorts. Yeah, for sure. I don't really know many people who smoke anymore. Yes, thank you, Thomas Henderson. I appreciate your homeboy. Yeah, a lot of people switch to American Spirits, I guess, because they don't like the tar, right? That's the whole point of the cigarettes, the tar. No, don't smoke cigarettes, or what, or do whatever. Misty Ultralight 120s. Yeah, Kristen. Hey, Chris, good job. Quit just last year. Good for you, buddy. That's good. All right, y'all. That's about all I got. Thank you so much for being here. Hope everybody has a good Father's Day. Happy Father's Day, Pops. And, hope everybody has a good, happy Sunday and that you have a wonderful and blessed week coming up. Okay? Go out and watch this movie if you want to. All right? And chill with your friends and family. Appreciate y'all. Love you. All right? Peace.